All right, in this episode, we're gonna be working on this Dodge Dakota single cab pickup truck with a 426 3-liter Whipple engine. We built the engine here in-house using MMX components. And this project also has an 8-speed automatic transmission. So in the last video and episode, we ended up getting a lot of our interior in here. So we've got a huge touchscreen for stereo. We get the Holley Terminator X with the digital dash, the Holley digital dash. It takes up the whole original cluster. It looks really good. Also got our seats in here, Challenger center console, and the 8-speed automatic shifter. So what I'm working on right now is we got to go and get some parts from the junkyard. So there was some stuff missing. Let's head over to the junkyard right now with our buddy Dennis and show you guys what we picked up. All right, so me and Dennis are at the junkyard because we need some clips. So for the AC compressor.
Wait, if I buy this, I need this clip. I can't have it.
Is it the same for you? Oh, I guess I'll find another one. So we need this clip for our AC compressor. And then we also need some AC lines, but right now we're stealing it off a Jeep Liberty. So we'll snip that and then I'll show you guys what else we need. Oh, you need one of these.
No, I don't.
Not anymore?
I don't think that's the right one, is it?
Oh, looks like it. Okay, so here is a Dakota. So we got a new condenser on the other one, but we need, see how this line goes here and then goes all the way to the firewall. I might see if we can find a different one, but what are you seeing?
I think you need the CD.
CD?
Black Label Society?
No. This is the older interior. Anything cool? Dude, there's like a whole acetylene torch set up back here.
A whole what?
Acetylene torch. Look.
Nice.
All right, so me and Dennis spent a while in the junkyard. We got a bunch of stuff, but completely unplanned. We ended up finding these OEM Mopar PWM fans. So I don't know if you guys can see it. Check that out. It's OEM Mopar, but it is a PWM fan, and it came with the shroud. It's a pretty nice low profile fan that we found. So right now we're trying to figure out the wiring. I'll give you guys our feedback. We're trying to figure this out, whether when we put, I guess, our negative and our positive, if we put full 12 volts to one of the wires or potentially ground it out, if it will turn on full speed. So we'll find out here in a second. All right, we don't know what we did, but this thing has so much.
A lot of hot air, dude.
Moving a ton of air. Look at Dennis's shirt's blowing in the wind. All right, so we picked up a bunch of good parts. I got some of the AC components, and one of the things is, with these trucks being as old as they are, it's hard to find a lot of new stuff. So obviously we're putting on as much new components as possible, but at the same time, there's some stuff that are just, it's almost impossible to find. So I want to get the original line that goes from the condenser over to there. You can buy a portion of it, a section of it, but then there is a orifice tube that goes essentially from here to the firewall, but there's a portion of it that goes from here to where there's an orifice, and you can't find that parts new online. So I'm trying to find that. I couldn't find one at the junkyard that was in decent shape, or one that I would want to use on something like this. So I'm gonna have to continue that hunt, but for now we still have some other stuff. So I also really wanted to use that Mopar fan, you guys. You saw me and Dennis messing with it, but I couldn't figure out the logic on getting it to work PWM controlled. I tried for probably way longer than I want to admit to try to get that thing programmed with the Holley Terminator X, and it just didn't seem happy. It wanted to just come on full blast all the time. So what I ended up using was the SPAL fan that I think I showed you guys. So I ended up modifying the radiator shroud, had to re-weld the brackets and get it in here, and we've got it in here. And there's not a whole lot of room in this engine bay with this huge engine, but I got it to fit, as you can see right there. So it's in here. One of the things with a PWM controlled fan, you need power, ground, and you can actually leave those on. So on factory vehicles like this, where it also has a PWM fan, the power is constantly being fed to the module, even when the vehicle is off. That's why some of these newer cars, if the module goes bad, it can actually drain the battery. But the way I want to hook it up is the original wires. It's a 40 amp circuit, so it is sufficient in the load capacity to this fan, because that's the requirements of this fan, so we can use that. I'm going to have it switched though. You don't necessarily have to, but it's just one extra measure so that we potentially don't have a dead battery one day. So we're going to use switched power to the fan. The Holley's gonna turn it on when it wants to use the fan, and then we're gonna PWM control it in the Holley. If that sounds complicated, I guess it is a little bit, but we're gonna get that done. And I was just trying to find a wire in the original harness that I can use to control the fan without having to running a new wire. So we're just gonna use an unused wire from the original harness and come out the bottom there and plug into the fan. And then the fuse box is dislodged because until we finally finish absolutely everything, I've been leaving it open and not dressed in because we keep having to add features and functions to this thing to make it just as stock as possible. So what I did right now was I just tested out a unused wire. I'm gonna go put the vehicle up. We've got the connector for the PWM fan, which is right here. So I'm gonna crimp the fittings on, get that wire it into the actual fuse box, and then we'll have a super strong fan with a nice custom radiator shroud that can pull fresh air through the front and keep this beast of an engine cool. All right, so we removed the old plug, and then we've got our new connections crimped on here. This is gonna be our signal wire for the PWM. And then here is the connector for our extremely expensive SPAL fan, but it's here. And then I just gotta clip in those connectors into this factory connector, and then we'll have a nice watertight, weatherproof seal. All right, so we've got our wiring all tucked back in. There's our connector. So now we can go back up top and we can program the fans. And I gotta finish wiring in over here on the fuse box also. All right, so I took a phone call to SPAL to figure out this brushless fan, but now we got it working. So this is on the low setting. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, and it's the inverse. So right now I'm just messing in the corner here. I haven't actually scaled it out to the different temperature ranges and all that. But we've got 78% is the lowest setting for the fan, so it's just barely on. And then I can command, if I put in 50, we'll call that about halfway on the fan. So you're gonna hear it cycle up. So that's a little more than half. And then 8% is max. So listen to it crank up here. So here's 8. This thing moves a ton of air, you guys. Let's see. Look at that. So we got a ton of suction through the front here. So I think we're good. We can mess with the programming on that, but at least the fan works now. All right, so next up I want to get our transmission lines plumbed in. So I've got these nice AN fittings here, and then I got the correct fitting that screws into the radiator. But just flaw by design, the tabs for the radiator shroud get into the fitting there. So I got to clearance that down there. This one clears absolutely no issue, but that one, of course, you can see it gets into it. So I just marked it. I'm gonna take the fan off, get the shroud out of here. The one nice thing that I did do with this is I put nut certs into the shroud. That way we can easily work on this. So I made it so that we can take the fan off, the fan can come out of the way, and then this can come out, because if you ever have to change the belt, there's like hardly any room in here. It's just the nature of packing such a big engine into a tiny little truck, but everything clears and everything fits, but just an extra step that would have to be done. So I'm gonna go ahead, get the shroud out of there. I'm gonna clearance that, make it nice. I can put this back in, and then we can get our transmission lines all plumbed in. All right, so I clearanced that out. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but now the fitting fits beautifully in here. I've got to put a overflow can for our radiator, so overflow reservoir can, whatever you want to call it. What I'm thinking is to keep this clean is right in here. So this is where I'd like to put it. So I want to mount it here, but obviously there's no bracket, but you guys know at this point we can do something about that. So this is where I'm thinking is right here. That way it'll keep it nice, clean, still have a clean visual. This works based on vacuum, so it's basically hydraulic. So one's going to be an overflow, the other one, it just pulls a vacuum out of it. So one is a vent. There's a straw that goes up into the can, probably about there, I want to say. Not sure exactly where the straw height is. We could check it with the cap off, but essentially it'll pull out of the bottom. So one of them is just a port off the very bottom. The other one is a straw and vent as well as overflow. and that way it's a nice clean mount here. So I'm gonna put that right there. So I made my 2 marks. I'm gonna take this shroud back out, and I'm going to weld on a piece of aluminum stock. That way it'll give me a flat surface to mount these 2 stainless steel L brackets. We'll rivet them in place, and then that will give us our overflow can, reservoir, and so it's just one more thing. And then we'll start just getting more plumbing done. All right, you guys, I am not nearly as embarrassed to show you guys my aluminum welds as I might have been one day. So I welded the back side of it just for practice. I didn't need to because I already did the front side, but like I said, no Picasso here, but I mean, for still being somewhat of an amateur welder, but being able to get the job done. I mean, strength wise, you guys know that's gonna be solid, but as far as, you know, trying to make things prettier or whatnot, it's only gonna come with time. Plus, I'm still literally using like a $200 cheap welder. What I do want to do is, when I get more time, is sell this cheap TIG welder, even though it does AC DC, so I can do, you know, steel and aluminum as you just saw. But I also have that Eastwood over there, but that's just a 110 over there. I want to sell this, sell that, and then get one nice Miller welder is the goal, but hey, I'll take it. So I'm just gonna clean off some of my writing and stuff from me mocking this whole thing up. There's the cutout for that fitting that I was telling you guys I had to do. So clean this up a little bit, and then I think we can reinstall it. I gotta reinstall it just to find out where I'm gonna drill my holes, and then we can rivet in those brackets and finalize some of the stuff. All right, so I got the overflow can mounted. My audio decided to not work on the recording, so I'm telling you guys what I was saying here after the fact. So ended up getting it on there. The brackets are riveted on, and then it's got 2 bolts that allow it to be easily removed. And then there's the port on the bottom so that it can connect to the neck on our radiator. And then I've got these nice billet aluminum fittings here. So we're gonna do all AN fittings down to the hose, and that's gonna go down to there. So here it is here. We gotta get it installed. And the other reason why I'm keeping it over there is because we have to get the AC lines. We still have to run them through there. So I wanna give myself as much room through that cavity there as possible to run the AC lines through here and go over to the firewall. So that's why we put that reservoir over there. And then we also still have to run our transmission lines. So everything's gonna run through there. It's gonna get crowded pretty soon through here, but that's why we put the reservoir off to the side. So our overflow reservoir is in there. It's looking good. Pretty happy with the outcome on that. Just gotta get some different hardware, but that's in there. We've got adequate clearance between our belt and accessory stuff. So I put this in here, sealed it. I also put in the 2 ports into the radiator. So now we need to make up the transmission lines. So let's go ahead and start measuring these out, get this up, and then I gotta run them over to obviously the transmission. We've already got the fittings in the transmission. Right now I just have a loop line installed so that we could start it and test it like we've been doing. But now it's time to get these connected. All right, so truck is up. I made up a couple fittings that go onto the actual radiator there. So we got 290s, and then what I do, if you guys want to know how I do this, is essentially just put a tie wrap and kind of get them roughed in to where I want them. I'm gonna put P clamps and make it all official and actually use -6 like billet aluminum ties. They kind of hold everything together when you have 2 lines. So this is the route I want to go through here, around here. Again, we're gonna put P clamps and secure things, and then here is the loop that I was telling you about. I've already got the fittings in the transmission for our -6. So now I am just going to cut these to length and get those on there, and then I am going to flush out the lines, and then we can start it, run it, and then we're gonna have to, of course, add more fluid once it fills up these lines, because our fluid levels can drop a little bit. So it's pretty much the process. So I'm gonna go ahead, cut these where I need to, put my fittings on. I'm gonna put a catch pan underneath here because it is going to make a mess. And then other thing too is around the exhaust area here. Here's not too crazy, but we'll end up coming back and putting heat wrap on all this stuff for long-term stuff, just so everything's good and safe. But anyways, let's get done. So there we go. Lines are made up. I just went ahead and put the ends on. So now we've got brand new lines all through here. Again, the tie wraps are just temporary. So all through there. And then now I'm going to take them back off and and flush out the lines. So let's go ahead, take them back off, flush them out, and then we can put them back on afterwards and kind of tidy them up a little bit. All right, so lines are flushed out. I've got them now connected. This is looking real clean. Really liking how this is all looking. This 90 is really big. I don't know, maybe I'll see if I can find one that has a little shorter travel. I don't know, it'd be nice if this was in more, but I guess, I mean, the neck is sitting that far back, so that looks a little bit odd to me, but I don't know. I might try to tuck it in behind here the next time I have things apart, because I might be taking the tank off. So I think if I put it behind the bracket, then this hose won't look nearly as funny. So anyways, let's go ahead and put this thing up, and then I'm gonna button up the lines, and then we can hopefully start it and check our fluid. All right, so I got the truck back up. I was gonna start it and you know, go through the whole procedure of refilling our transmission, but I don't want to smoke myself out right now because it's gonna have to be running for a little bit of time and get up to temperature and stuff like that. So I don't want to fill up the shop with a bunch of exhaust fumes right now. I want to continue to work on this. So what I'm actually gonna do is we'll deal with that afterwards, because kind of have to cycle it through the gears. But anyways, I got some of these clips on here. So I'm going to finalize some of this, and then some of the stuff is kind of test stuff. So I want to get to, right now I just have a positive cable, but I want to get a nice black cable for our ground strap that goes right to our starter from the frame. And then you can see here we've got all the clips in. Everything is routed nice and out of the way and out of harm's way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to, we've got the Beltec hangers on here, but I'm going to take this off, and we have to plasma cut this out to make way for the Caltracs. So, and we also have to press out the bushing on the front here, and the Caltracs kit is over here. So you can see the arms, it's got a aluminum bushing that has to go in the front of our springs, and then the Caltracs bars. But if you look at the Hellcat over here, we have to essentially do that to the Beltec hanger. So you have to make this moon shape to allow for the bolt to clear. Otherwise it will hit on the Beltec hanger. So I gotta do the same thing on the other one. So kind of use this as a rough guide for how much we need to remove, but there's that. So we're gonna do the same thing. So let's get the spring off, support it, press out the bushing, and we're gonna have to cut out the hanger on the front. Okay, so we've got this bolt loose, and then I'm using this to adjust the pressure on the spring so I can actually get the bolt out. And then once we kind of dial this in, kind of fiddle with the pressure a little bit, get this bolt loose like that, and then we can lower the front of the spring out like you can see here. So I'm gonna lower this down, try to keep everything connected as much as possible, and then hopefully I can, what I'm planning on doing is letting this down enough. Might have to disconnect the shock, but enough that I can get a ball joint press in here, press out this bushing, and then we have to remove this from the vehicle. I guess technically you could plasma cut it on there or however you want to cut it out, but I'm going to take it off, it's just easier, and then we'll plasma cut this portion out here. All right, so using the ball joint press, we've got the bushing out of the leaf eyelet there, so we can put our billet one in there. We'll press it back in, but let's go ahead and take off this, and like I said, we got to make the modification to the hanger. Okay, so there we go. We've got that billet aluminum sleeve in there. I believe it's aluminum, but anyways, that's in there. And I took off the hanger, so I modified the hanger. It looks like there might have been a revision to these, so I ended up modifying it and then double checking it, and there's actually quite a bit more clearance than the same kit that I have on the Dakota, but it's a little bit older. So I'll show you guys what I did. You can kind of see this half moon piece here. So I ended up cutting it out, and then I painted it. So this is kind of the end result. So it just allows for a little bit more clearance for our Caltracs to kind of just articulate through there. So I'm gonna go ahead, take the other side off. I'm gonna bolt this back on, and we'll get this one on here and then make the same modification to the other side. Like you can see, looks nice and clean like that. And then we'll be able to get this all on here. All right, so check it out. The Caltracs bar is on this side. We still gotta tighten it up and adjust it, but you can't do it until the suspension is fully loaded. So right now I've got them loose, but we'll be tightening them up once you actually load the suspension. As far as this one, so I want to show you guys a few things. So same thing, I took this off, ended up notching that section out. It looks like Caltracs must have made a modification to these. You can see that they also left this other hole here, which is pretty much where mine are. So mine articulates more so where that hole would be. So They must have adjusted it, but one thing you do still have to do, you'll see right there, is notch out the parking brake bracket. So see how I have that notched out? And obviously the gas tank is here, so what I did on that was I just used a Sawzall, and I had my fireproof blanket all laid up in there. Used a Sawzall in there, and then cleaned it up with a deburring bit. So what I gotta do now is essentially lubricate these, and then attach the bar on this side, and then we should be good to go here. All right guys, well, you can hear 426 3-liter Whipple chopping away over there. And then I've got the Eco Diesel with my open deck trailer right there. We're gonna load it up, take it over to get an alignment, and that way the wheels are all pointed straight, and then we can start maybe road testing this thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So let's move this sucker out. Alright, there she is. She's getting aligned, and then once she's done, we'll get her out of here and bring her back. Alright, we all out of here. You ready, Dennis?
Go.
We out. Alright, so it's the next day. Me and Dennis spent some time messing around with this thing. When we took it to the alignment shop, I guess a couple things. We're still dialing in the tune with Matt. Still some stalling stuff and stuff that needs to get sorted out that way. But what I did notice is when I loaded it up on the trailer, you got to remember, all I've really done with the vehicle so far is move it from where the Hellcat Ram is to out here and back again. But when I went to go put it up on the trailer, I noticed it was like super sluggish and feeling kind of weird. Almost like it was slipping the transmission or something. Anyways, I know when the transmission goes into limp mode, it'll be in like second or third gear. Sure enough, when we hooked up to the software that's running, there's a standalone controller on this that's running the 8-speed automatic. And sure enough, when we hooked into it, it was in third gear when you put it into drive. And also when you flip the shifter stock over into manual mode, it wouldn't work. So right now, I kind of got the interior apart again. So when you put it over into manual, it would not work. It would just start flashing. So I ended up spending literally several hours last night with the owner of the standalone controller for the 8-speed, and ended up getting it resolved. He had to log in remotely into the computer on this, update the firmware on it, and then it wasn't in limp mode. But then he spent probably another half an hour, 45 minutes figuring out why it wouldn't go into manual mode. He had to do some weird software changes on his controller, and then now everything works. So that part's working, but we did notice right when we went to move it in that we ran out of fuel. This has a Holley fuel pump in it and fuel pump module, but it's been so long, you guys, because the plans and ideas for this truck has changed so many times that I initially programmed the Holley dash to work, but I don't think that I programmed the ohm reading on this absolutely correctly. So I was just going through some of the instructions for this. If you guys are curious what I'm doing, so you'll see over here 220 ohms to 20 ohms. So right here is my wire that comes from the fuel pump module, and a lot of this is going to get cleaned up. It's just kind of test wiring until we finalize stuff. But I just checked because we ran out of fuel last night, and if I turn on the multimeter here and I go to ground and to the wire that goes to the fuel pump module, see there, 220. So we were completely out of fuel. But when I plugged it in on the dash, I was showing 60%. And the reason why I think is because probably when I programmed this a while back, I probably programmed it for a 0 to 100 reading. So if you look here, once this boots up, look, it says we have 70%, but we are out of fuel. So what I'm doing right now is I got my jerry can. I'm gonna go get some fuel for this thing. That way we've got fuel in it to keep moving around testing it. And just one step at a time. The goal for this video is to be able to at least cruise it up and down the street or something like that, or see if we can get this thing driving a little bit more, a little bit better and all that. So I got to do another revision to the tune with Matt, but can't do that until we got fuel. So let's go get some fuel. All right, there we go. We got $45, 12.3 gallons of 93 loaded up. Let's get back. All right, so gas is in the tank, and then I'm just in here on the configuration for our fuel gauge on the Holly. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I've got our ohms going up to 220, as you can see here, and then down to 20. But I think what the problem was is I think I had it flipped. So I think I'm supposed to put 220 at the 0% fuel gauge, and then because we were empty and we were 220, so I think it's just flipped, and that's the reason why it's pissed off. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip it, and then we should be able to have an accurate fuel gauge. All right, so it is now nighttime. I've got the trickle charger on it just because I've had the key on with the engine off quite a bit. And I got the gas gauge kind of sorted out. I spent a bunch of time on the phone with Holly trying to dial in this touchscreen and get that configured, but it seems to be reading a little bit better. We've got gas in the tank. And then what also did show up, you guys, I did off camera, I went and I dropped off the seat belts. So I removed the seat belts that we had in here. They were that charcoal color, and we sent them off to safety restore. It says 24-hour turnaround time, so it's a Thursday right now. I'm gonna see, I guess, how long they take to get them, but you'll notice we don't have an intake, but it actually arrived. So I'm pretty excited about this intake here. So check this out. All true carbon fiber, and this thing is massive. So this is actually gonna work out quite well. So this is a leg maker, I believe is what I ordered. So it's all there, and then it also has one of these filter socks. This came with an S&B filter on it, and then it's got one of these filter socks. So I'm gonna put this on top of it. Let's see how it looks, how it fits. And we got our band clamps here as well for the throttle body. So let's get this on here and see how it goes. All right, guys, so it's the next day. I ended up getting the intake on last night. I am really happy with how that looks. A couple small things. Since the Supercharger has its IAT, intake air temperature sensor, located on the back, this one is no more. So it has this port here. So we're gonna have to find a grommet to block that off. Also, we got to go from this PCV port on the Whipple. There is a fitting on the bottom, so I got to get a hose that goes to there. What else? I did find something, like I mentioned to you guys, we were having some issues with startup. This silicone rubber fitting here was actually cracked. Look at that. This rubber, look at that China. I think that probably wasn't helping our issue. So I had to trim it back, and then I just put the band clamp on it just to kind of hold it in place for now. But I got to try and redo this that goes to here. So what was happening was it was creating a vacuum leak, but only it seemed like once it got hot, or vice versa. I don't know. It was creating a weird condition where we were chasing the startup issue. So the other thing too is I think we're gonna try to cram a catch can somewhere in here. I don't know, maybe we can fit one somewhere around there, so we can go from here, put a catch can here, and plumb it into there. So that'll happen. And what else? I don't think I showed you guys the actual Caltracs. Like I said, still have to adjust them, but you can see the Caltracs are on there installed. Kind of wrapped that up a few days ago before we took it for an alignment, but yeah, we'll probably have to adjust the tension. You're supposed to leave them essentially loose on the street, but that's that. The other thing I'm gonna do as well, run to the store. I want to see if I can get that little rubber coupling there, the one that was broken, and then right here I got to get those little plastic grommets that go in here with the screws, so that we can actually mount a plate on this thing and start road testing it. So here's the old seat belts. These are the old tan ones from the tan interior. I might just throw that in for now, just so we've got a lap belt while those other ones come back from safety restore. And yeah, just 5 million little things, you guys. So this is gonna be just tons and tons of little things. Also, I did make an appointment to a local company that's gonna make up the AC lines. So the AC lines that get from here to the compressor to our firewall. So it's supposed to go there on Wednesday and get the AC lines fitted so that we can get that all hooked up as well. All right, just got back from the store, got a few things. So I ended up getting some of these PCV connector hoses. So I'm hoping maybe one of these can work for that broken one. And then I didn't realize there were so many different sizes of these license plate doohickeys. So I got a few different ones. We'll see which ones fit the squares on the roll pan. And then I also got some 1/2-inch hose so that maybe we can reroute some of this stuff and get some stuff situated. So let's go ahead and see if we can't mount a plate on this thing. All right, well, First time's a charm. I managed to use these black ones so that they don't stand out like a sore thumb, and they snap perfectly into place. So, and we got a couple Phillips screws to get the plate on there. All right, managed to get the plate mounted, so there we go. DAC pack is in. All right, well, startup tune still needs to be dialed in, but we gotta drive this thing, you guys. So I've got the Holly data log in here. Nothing too crazy, but we're just gonna go for a quick little rip here. Do a little data logging. I can barely see out of the windshield. This thing needs a bath. First maiden drive, you guys. Nothing too crazy, but data log going. For some reason it kind of closed itself out. Alright, we're back driving again. We've got our GPS speedo working. We've got a few gears. Drives pretty good, actually. Drive straight, alignment's good. Transmission's going to be learning itself. Heck yeah, she's running and driving though, you guys. I need to see about bleeding the brakes a little more. These brakes are fighting me. They're pretty mushy, so definitely got to get some more confidence in the brakes. But at least she's running and driving. Alright. Nothing too crazy as far as the drive, but let's go ahead, bring it back in. I'm going to double check the transmission fluid and see if I can bleed the brakes a little more. So we'll move the Hellcat Ram out and get this in here and double check those things. Alright, so truck is up there and idling. I double checked the transmission fluid. The truck's in neutral right now. If you're wondering what that chirp is, this is something that makes me crazy about these Hemis with a huge cam. It's not a belt chirp. It's not up here. It's actually, what you're hearing is like valve overlap from the cam coming out of the exhaust. Hear it? So you're actually hearing it slap out of there. Even my Hellcat does it. It kind of makes me a little bit crazy, but it's not a belt chirp, I promise. Hopefully the camera picks it up. You can't really hear anything up here, but you go to the back and then you hear the chirp coming out of the exhaust. It's kind of just, we could probably speed up the RPM so you don't hear it as much, but you're just hearing the pulses coming out of the exhaust. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and bleed the brakes. Transmission fluid's good, even have to take it for a little rip. So it's just gonna be a matter of getting the transmission to learn a little bit, and we'll go from there. All right guys, so you'll notice the wheels are off and I've been bleeding the brakes, but I'm still trying to deal with a little bit of something. So this truck originally came with just rear wheel ABS. If you guys have ever owned one of these, it doesn't even really do anything, to be honest. It just prevents the rear wheels from essentially locking up, but the rear wheels are barely even doing anything. But one of the issues is, since we don't have the stock computer anymore, this isn't really activating. So I think what my suspicion is right now is there's a bunch of air trapped in here. I've tried bleeding this thing 10 different ways from Sunday and it still has a mushy pedal. So I think what I'm going to do is, since this technically isn't even going to work, it won't work without the factory computer anyways, and it knowing all the speeds and how fast you're going and whatnot. And really, it was pretty much useless back in the day anyways. I think what I'm going to do is put a proportioning valve here. We'll install a Wilwood proportioning valve. That way we don't have to worry about air getting trapped in the module. And have a spongy pedal, and then hopefully it's that. If not, maybe potentially, since we did put a brand new master cylinder on here, maybe this master cylinder is defective, but I can't rule out the master cylinder without knowing for 100% certainty if there's no air in here. I've tried doing a manual brake. We've tried putting pressure on the reservoir, pushing the fluid through. I've also tried, even as crazy as it sounds, putting pressure at the caliper ends on all four corners, pressurizing fluid back through, hoping that maybe if there was air stuck in here that it would make its way and rise up. Obviously air rises in fluid, so I was hoping maybe that would do it. And then after I pressed all the fluid this way, then I flushed it back down the other way, and it still leaves you with a spongy pedal. So I haven't quite figured that out, but I will get to the bottom of it. Other than that, we did accomplish the goal, you guys, of being able to drive this thing under its own power. So a lot of little things. I also got to check, for some reason, originally, like I said, when we had this thing running with a Scat Pack engine, I tested the rear backup lights and stuff like that, the reverse lights, and they were working, and now for whatever reason they're not working. So I got to see after Buddy did his thing with the standalone controller that controls the 8-speed, because the 8-speed's what's telling the computer what is going on and if it's in reverse and all that stuff, and the standalone controller is what's inputting the reverse signal to the relay in here so that it can power on the reverse lights. It's like a whole ordeal, you guys, but for whatever reason I'm not getting that signal out of the controller, it seems like, when you put it in reverse. So I gotta figure that out, probably have to reprogram something. So 5 million tiny little things that prevent this thing from being finished, I swear. So that's gonna get done, and pretty much, I don't know, just a bunch of little things. So overall, we're getting really close. Like I said, I've got the appointment this coming Wednesday to get the AC lines routed, and then we'll have to wire that in. We're gonna have to put the high sensor, high pressure switch, low pressure switch, wire that in, wire it into the snowflake button on the dash, and also wire it into the Holly, because the Holly has to know that when you turn the AC on and the compressor kicks on, to bump up the idle a little bit so that the engine doesn't stall, and also to turn on the fan. Like, it's a whole situation. So a lot more that goes into this than you guys probably imagine, but I'm trying to relay it as much as possible with you guys here. So anyways, thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up. If you guys haven't yet, go head over to shopboosted.com. If you guys need help with your project, I do offer consultation services, whether you're doing something mild to wild. I got you covered on all that. Also, we got a ton of merch, a bunch of products, bunch of parts. So go head over to shopboosted.com, check it out, support your boy. It's what makes all these builds possible. Subscribe if you haven't already so that you're notified of when I post another video, and we'll catch you on the next one.